Now, I know it's long overdue, but today we finally have our pre and post testing video for Edge of Fate. This is easily one of, if not the biggest sandbox update that Bungie has ever done. From the stat and armor rework, the additive melee changes to all exotic weapons and armor changes, fellas, there was a lot to unpack here, which is why today's video, we're really just going to be sticking to the exotic changes, and more specifically, exotic weapons. We will have an entirely separate video that's going to go over exotic armor pieces, but considering how much is happening here, in order to keep this video under an hour, we decided to split things up. Another thing that's also an issue is comparing damage numbers. If you remember before Edge of Fate, our damage numbers were ginormous, but in Edge of Fate, those numbers have been squished. This video is mainly going to focus on the functionality changes that our exotic weapons received. And as far as numbers go, we're simply going to just be comparing certain percentage numbers as best we can. Now, starting out with our exotic weapons. First up, we have Bastion. Saint's Fist PV melee damage bonus has been increased from 100% to a whopping 300%. That also now works with all melee abilities, and the time the perk is active has been increased to 3 seconds. Now, pre-Edge of Fate, the Saint's Fist perk only lasted for about 2 seconds, and as you can see testing here with Knife Trick, at base, it would deal 14,441 damage per knife, and then with Saint's Fist active, it would jump up to 28,881 damage, thus being a 100% increase in damage. Now, post-Edge of Fate, the Saint's Fist perk does indeed last for 3 seconds now, adding a little more forgiveness, and it also works with every melee ability, and each one of these are getting increased by a whopping 300%. Overall, a pretty nice change here to Bastion. Just keep in mind that melee damage increases now work on an additive system rather than multiplicative. Now, although Bastion does provide a higher damage bonus than 1-2 Punch does, it is a bit more niche as you can't activate it against all targets, as you have to hit the majority of Bastion's pellets, which unfortunately ends up with many enemies just straight up dying. Whereas the shotgun with 1-2 Punch, for the most part, you can always get that procced and keep those melee builds rolling. Granted, in harder content, you can see where Bastion can be very beneficial. Next up, we have Monte Carlo. Its catalyst, which is that bayonet mode, will no longer deal reduced melee damage to bosses, mini bosses, and champions. Now, this is one of those changes. It's a little hard to compare pre versus post, but pre-Edge of Fate, this was dealing somewhere around 48,636 damage against Carl, which was a 460% increase over base melee. Now, in comparison against a red bar enemy, pre-Edge of Fate, that did 133,749 damage with the bayonet, which is a 1,440% increase over the base melee attack, which is quite the difference there. I don't know about you guys, seeing these big numbers we used to do, now that we've become acclimated to the smaller damage numbers, it's just mind-blowing. Now, post-Edge of Fate against Carl, the bayonet is hitting for 1,386 damage, which is a whopping 1,423% increase over our base melee. Now, interestingly enough, against a red bar enemy, it's only a 1,440% increase over our base melee. Now, with these buffs, do I think it's worth charging a champion with your bayonets? Yeah, I would. Next, we have Winterbite. This exotic can now receive melee damage bonuses from a variety of sources. However, the enhanced melee damage you receive with ammo has been reduced to only a 20% increase versus bosses, down from 50%. Now, pretty straightforward here. Against this boss with ammo, we hit for 568 damage, and with no ammo, we only dealt 379 damage, giving us that 50% increase. Now, side note, guys, we did try to test this in gambits, hoping that these numbers would transfer sandbox to sandbox, but unfortunately, the scaling just wasn't 1-to-1. Now, post-update, Winterbite with ammo is hitting Carl for 137 damage, and with no ammo, this is only dealing 114 damage. So confirmed here, it is only a 20% increase. Now, personally, I haven't played with Winterbite too much, guys, to really make a call on where this glaive sits. Have I used glaive builds? Yes. Most notably in the day 1 raid, I literally used a glaive build in the final encounter to carry me, and it worked tremendously. We do have a couple Winterbite builds that were submitted for build battles, and we'll give them a go. All I can say on the glaive side is that legendary glaives currently feel amazing, but this week we'll see if Winterbite holds up. Now, moving on, now we have Vigilance Wing, with the change here reading that its last stand perk bonus is now active when running solo in PvE activities. Now, pre-update, this would give increased reload speed, handling, and recovery, while solo, which only worked inside of PvP. Now, post-update, this grants increased reload speed, handling, and plus 100 health stats, which, as you can see in the side-by-side, it is in fact now working while solo inside of PvE. Now, the increased health stats was just recently fixed in update 9.0.0.6. Before, it was actually giving increased class stats, which was pretty nice, as above 100, it would grant us an overshield, but health is still pretty pretty good as well, since under 100s, this increases the amount of health you receive from picking up orbs, along with increased flinch resistance, and then over 100s, that increases your shield recharge rate and your shield health, something not to be overlooked, especially inside of PvP. Next, we have Hierarchy of Needs. Bungie has made this bow the Galahorn of bows, meaning it's now a support bow to other bows. Now, its changes read that players now gain charges of Guidance Ring with any hit from Hierarchy of Needs. Players now only need 3 charges to deploy a ring, and the Guidance Ring duration itself has been increased from 13 to now 20 seconds. And to even make things better, the Guidance Ring now rotates to face its owner. Now, players are now limited to 1 Guidance Ring in the world per player, as spawning in a second one will remove your previous ring. Now, as you can see here, guys, all bows now spawn missiles when fired through an allied player's Guidance Ring. And this is where it differs from Galahorn, because it's not just legendary bows, it's all bows, even exotics. Now, they also fix an issue where Hierarchy's secret missiles would not play detonation visual effects when colliding with the world geometry. But as you can see here in our pre-footage, you needed 6 charges to spawn a Guidance Ring, with crits giving you 1 charge, and precision kills giving you 2 charges, and a body shot kill giving just 1 charge. Now, pre-update, the ring would only last about 13 seconds, like Bungie said, but you could spawn multiple rings at a time in case you wanted to aim at maybe different targets. The big difference here, though, is that those spawn missiles from the ring would only work for yourself. Post-update, though, you only need 3 charges to spawn that Guidance Ring, and any hit now counts, not just precision hits. Now, the ring lasting for 20 seconds is huge. You can see the rotation here where it faces the owner, which really means you don't need more than 1 ring at a time. And you can see here all the different exotic bows that are working with this. Now, what we did notice, there were a few that didn't work. For instance, Love Monarch, for some reason, doesn't work with Hierarchy of Needs, and I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but still, I would love to see this synergize. Now, next up, we have Dead Man's Tale. Each stack of Cranial Spike now grants plus 3.4% damage versus Cabans, maxing out at 17% at 5 stacks, and plus 1 rounds reloaded. Now, pre-update, Cranial Spike stacks would grant escalating range, stability, reload speed, and aim assist. Now, post-update, you're also getting that increased damage and rounds reloaded on top of that. Now, testing against Carl here, base DMT crit deals 165 damage. 1 stack of Cranial Spike deals 171 damage, 2 stacks at 176, 3 at 182, 4 stacks at 186, and then finally capping out at 5 stacks at 193 damage. Now, for the rounds loaded, before Edge of Fate came out, I thought this was going to be sort of like reround rounds, or even like 4 times where each stack would just auto reload a shot. But each stack actually increases the amount of bullets you load at a time when you manually reload. At base, you normally load 2 shots, and each stack loads 1 additional round, which is beautiful because if you get to max stacks and then you reload, you're able to load 7 shots at a time, which is incredible for DMT. It's essentially your entire magazine loaded in just 2 animations. Now, next we have Duality. Bungie added a secondary activator for on Black Wings, as it now gives the buff when landing most of your pellets on a target. Now, previously, you could only gain stacks of on Black Wings by getting pellet kills, which would grant increased precision damage for your slug rounds and also grant increased reload speed, which would stack up to 3 times. Now, post Edge of Fate, you can gain stacks by just hitting most of your pellets on a single target, which seems to be around 10 pellets. Now, this is a fantastic quality of life change to Duality. So for my Duality users out there, now is your time. Now, next we have Navigator. This has received a damage bonus for the weapon itself while the user has Woven Mail. In PvE, this is a 25% increase in damage, and in PvP, this gets a 5% increase. Now, on top of that, the weapon's ammo generation status also increased while the user has Woven Mail. Now, this is all additional effects, so not really anything happening here pre versus post. At base, though, in our current sandbox, Navigator hits Carl for 30 to the head and 23 to the body. Then if you have Woven Mail, this goes up to 38 damage per crit and 28 per body, which is roughly a 26% increase in our crit damage and a 21.7% increase for our body shot damage. Now, inside of PvP at base, we're dealing 21 damage per crit and 16 damage per body, which if you're under weapon stat 100, you're able to get the kill in 10 crits to body for a 0.73 second time to kill value. Now, if you have Woven Mail, this goes up to 22 damage per crit and 16 per body with that 5% buff, lowering our time to kill value to 0.67 seconds, but requires 11 crits. Now, in terms of the ammo generation stats, at base, I was able to generate a special ammo brick with the Navigator from 11 kills. And then with Woven Mail, it only took 9 kills. Now, keep in mind, no one's really using Navigator for Navigator itself. Let's be real. Most people are using the exotic catalyst to get grapple melees and go crazy. But if you do break away from that and you suddenly just want to do damage with the trace itself, well, now you can, and it won't be as big of a handicap. Next up, we have Wicked Implements. Now, we've already covered this already in a review, and let me just say, guys, this was an incredible change. Bungie shifted this weapon's archetype from a 180 precision frame scout rifle to now a 260 rapid fire frame scout, making this weapon just feel all around snappier. But this also increased our DPS in PvE. It's got its magazine bumped up from 15 to 20 to compensate for the rate of fire, and it does take one additional hit to start slowing to get that freeze, but honestly, considering the rate of fire of the weapon, that's really a non-issue. If you haven't checked out a review, guys, I highly recommend you do. It absolutely cooks with backers now, more so than ever before. Next, we have Heartshadow. This received a buff increasing its ammo reserves, reducing the cost of its heavy attack from 4 to 3. They've also added a new functionality where defeats while shots in the dark are active will make you invisible once more. Now, pre-Edge of Fate, Heartshadow had 57 ammo, and heavy attacks would cost 4 ammo, and defeats while shot in the dark was active would not make you invisible again, unless you were using something like Stylish Executioner. Now, post-update, Heartshadow still has 57 ammo, but the heavy attack only consumes 3 ammo, and as you notice here, kills while shot in the dark is active will make you invisible once again. Now, since we're talking swords, our next one is Worldline Zero. Bungie increased the lunge distance of the heavy Tesseract attack by 3 meters, but they removed the ability to chain 2 blink attacks back to back. Then they added a new effect where defeating a target with Tesseract allows you to Tesseract again for a short duration. Now, these extra blink attacks cost less ammo, and they consume less guard energy. Now, pre-Edge of Fate, we don't really have the exact distance here, as we didn't have the shooting range at the time, but post-update, we can currently Tesseract about 10 meters. Now, in terms of functionality, pre-update, after you would use Tesseract, you could Tesseract again right after. No kills needed. And this was great for damage, as you could chain these attacks one after another. Now, most of the times, you pretty much TP'd right past your enemy, but it was nice when you pulled it off. Post-Edge of Fate, though, you can only Tesseract once unless you get a kill with it. But if you do get a kill, you can now Tesseract up to 3 times in a row. Now, I wasn't able to do this super consistently. The standard was actually 2 in a row, but it does make for some potentially interesting builds. Keep in mind, this synergizes really well with Tireless Blade, which gives us sword ammo for every other powered sword kill. So you could be in a situation where you can literally just Tesseract, speed killing a number of enemies, one after another. The other side of things is you can utilize Worldline for what it was originally used for, which is for speedrunning. Now, next we have Devil's Ruin, another exotic that we just had to review right out the gates. This is easily one of my most used exotic weapons so far since the launch of Edge of Fate. First up, they have removed the fire on release behavior, and the beam is now behind a special reload. Kills with this weapon now makes fire sprites, and when you pick up a fire sprite, it enables the special reload beam shots. Now, the beam now scorches on hits and ignites on kills. On top of that, the magazine size has been increased to 20, and it's now intrinsically anti-unstoppable. Now, if you want a full breakdown on the feel of this weapon, guys, feel free to check it out. We did an entire review on it, but let me just say right out the gate, Devil's Ruin has never been better. Originally, we were worried this was going to be more of a nerf, but really it's all around a buff. It has its own self-contained gameplay loop of getting a kill with the sidearm, picking up the fire sprite that you generate, doing the special reload to shoot that beam that will scorch and ignite enemies. And currently right now, it even has an interesting bug, or at least we think it's a bug, where if you suspend a target and then just shoot them normally with Devil's Ruin, you'll actually cause an ignition. So really the gameplay loop is to suspend targets, shoot them with the regular fire shots of Devil's Ruin, proc the ignition, and if the target is thick enough, then do your special reload and finish them off with your super shots. This is a must-use exotic this season, guys, and there's so much synergy in our artifact mods. I urge you to give it a go. Now, this brings us to our final exotic weapon change, but a meaty one at that. Tommy's Matchbook. Bungie added a burning screen effect while the player takes self-damage from ignition trigger. Other players who are taking self-damage from ignition trigger will have a burning effect surrounding their model. Now, for ignition trigger, the HUD buff now appears as a bar. Now, while ignition trigger is active, the bar charges as you fire the weapon and then drains when you don't. So long as the bar has some charge, ignition trigger will remain active. Now, for its other perks, heatsink. Hipfire self-damage has been decreased to 50% less damage than ADS self-damage, which was previously 33% less damage. Then finally, for our exotic catalyst, they removed the improved health regeneration, but final blows while ignition trigger is active will grant you cure ×1, and the scorch on hit is unchanged. Now, pre-Edge of Fate, essentially when you would hold down the trigger and fire the weapon, you'll proc ignition trigger after about 20 shots or so, which would increase your damage, but it will burn you. Now, the other perk, heatsink, then would come into play, which reduces overheat damage while not aiming bringing down science. And then you had the Catalyst, which would grant improved health regeneration and allow you to scorch on hits when the ignition trigger was active. Now, post-update, first up, you now notice that burning effect to show the self-damage, which you can see from the subtle flames on the bottom of your screen. As well as if you're looking at another person taking self-damage, it'll show them burning up with some flame and scorching effects on their character model. Now, the big change here is to ignition trigger. As you can see, there's now a meter on your HUD. It'll fill up as you continue to shoot, and as long as there's some progress on this meter, ignition trigger will stay procced, which is really good. It was really annoying before that when you stopped shooting, even for just a moment, you would lose the ignition trigger, and you would have to hold the trigger back down and re-proc the perk. Now, for heatsink, you do take less damage when hip firing than you did before, as you can see here in this side-by-side clip. It takes us about a second and a half longer to reach the point of our shields breaking. Then finally, for our Catalyst, this granting us cure ×1 is such a great quality of life improvements. Way better than the improved health regeneration, something we ourselves have actually experienced in one of our build battles where we got to take advantage of Tommy and its most recent updates. So guys, those are your exotic weapon changes. Now, equally as large is our exotic armor changes. We'll be giving you those very, very soon. That is also going to be a very big video, but stay tuned for that one. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.